Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. An official welcome to our webinar tonight. Here we are. Oh, that's not there. There it is. Okay. So alhamdulillah, we're here to speak today about the Bioscience and Islam Curriculum. And inshallah, hear from our presenter, our first keynote presenter, Professor Abdalla from Australia. I'm just going to go ahead and get the correct screen opened. If that is the correct screen. So that we can start, inshallah, on a good note. I always like to take a minute to also set our intentions. I find it very helpful for myself as well. Sometimes we just automatically get on and, this was on my calendar. My administrator asked me to join or somebody invited me to join. I think it benefits all of us to just take a few seconds to clarify our intentions quietly to ourselves, and inshallah, perhaps to even elevate our intention, to think of a way in which you can seek Allah's pleasure even more through just clarifying why you're here, inshallah. So let us take a few seconds to do that. And please, if you're not on mute, I'm going to ask you to mute, and I'll ask the co-hosts here if they can also assist with that. So take a few seconds to just set your intentions.
Intentions, just doing the intentions. No.
All right, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Jazakallah khairan. So I am Shaza Khan. I am the Executive Director of the Islamic Schools League of America. It's a pleasure to be one of the co-hosts of this event today. ISLA is a nonprofit that supports full-time Islamic schools in the United States. And as you can see, we're gathered here with you today, although you may not be in the United States. And so one of the things we do is try and establish relationships with other people, organizations, scholars, institutions that are doing important work that can elevate what our Islamic schools are doing here in the US and abroad, inshallah. What we've learned over the past several years of working together is that a lot of the challenges that we have here in the US are shared with our colleagues across the globe. And we're also very honored to have several collaborators here. I'll just go back to this first screen. The Islamic Schools Association of Australia, Malik Fahd Islamic School, both located in Australia, as well as the Center for Islamic Thought and Education in the University of South Australia, as well as the Global Associations of Islamic Schools, which has really changed the game for how we as Islamic school educators connect with one another globally. And it's really a pleasure to also co-host this with the Initiative on Islam and Medicine. Inshallah, I'd like to tell you just a little bit about the Initiative on Islam and Medicine, which is, you're going to learn a lot more about them and their founder, Dr. Aasim Padela, today. He'll be speaking as well. IIM, the Initiative on Islam and Medicine, is a leading research center at the intersection of Islam and biomedicine. They produce groundbreaking scholarship that impacts the lives of Muslim patients, healthcare providers, and religious leaders, using an innovative approach that draws insights from a diverse set of disciplinary experts from across the theological, social, and biomedical sciences. As a platform for impactful research, tailored education, and creative dialogue, IIM's focus on improving the health of American Muslims and developing an academic multidisciplinary field of Islamic bioethics. And again, we can see as we're all gathered here from around the world today that so many of our missions may be particular to the localities in which we are, but that they hold great benefit, inshallah, for all of our Muslim ummah. And we look forward to learning a little bit more about that. I'm Shaza Khan. I'm the Executive Director of ISLA. I just put the slide here because I often forget to introduce myself. So that we're all clarified and aligned on what our goals are today. This is a 90-minute session. I'm really honored for you to be spending some of your time, whether it's day or evening, with us here. We hope to, inshallah, talk a little bit and seek greater understanding about the importance of teaching from an Islamic worldview. And we'll hear more from Professor Abdalla in that in just in a minute. We'd like to introduce the Bioscience and Islam Curriculum, which is a free curriculum that I personally believe every Islamic high school should be teaching, or at least have something very similar to that. Today, we're going to be encouraging you to learn more about it and see if there's a way for you to implement this in your schools and classrooms, inshallah. And for us to be able to have a dialogue with you at the end of the session and the last, after the panelists have spoken, sorry, we will be administering a survey, a brief survey with you all, with which we will solicit some of your input, as well as having an opportunity for you to speak to the experts who are gathered here, who will be speaking in breakout rooms so that we can understand what you need in order to implement this curriculum. So why bioscience in Islam and why now? Well, we're going to be sharing more about that today, inshallah. We'd like to help you learn more about how this curriculum can inshallah help, we hope, reduce doubts that may be arising otherwise when we don't have our biosciences and our curriculum, generally speaking, aligning with Islam. One of the questions I invite you to think about as you come in here as an educator, as an administrator, as somebody concerned with what our youth and rising bioscientists are learning and how they're integrating everything that they do within an Islamic worldview, we'd like you to consider asking yourself, how does the curriculum that you teach help your students stay within the fold of Islam? And how might it inadvertently nurture doubts? I imagine that some of you may be joining us today because you've asked yourselves that question as well. And in particular, why Bioscience and Islam, this curriculum that we'll be speaking about? We believe that it equips students with a skill set to critically view the world vis-a-vis bioscience and Islam. It's a focused curriculum with practical implementation, and it's targeted on key questions, which you can see lined out there and which we'll be going over a little bit more later on in the program. I personally believe that every Islamic high school should be teaching this curriculum. And I look forward to you and hearing from what you think about it, inshallah, throughout this program. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, our keynote speaker, who has written prolifically on teaching from an Islamic worldview and what this really means. Professor Mohamed Abdalla at the Center for Islamic Thought and Education has worked in the field of Islamic studies for over 25 years and played a leading role in establishing Islamic studies across Australian universities. In 2020, he was appointed a member of the Order of Australia, the highest recognition for outstanding achievement and service for his significant service to education in the field of Islamic studies. He has authored and co-authored books including Curriculum Renewal for Islamic Education, Critical Perspectives on Teaching Islam in Primary and Secondary Schools, Islamic Schooling in the West, Pathways to Renewal, Leadership in Islam, Processes and Solutions in Australian Organizations, amongst many others. Professor Abdalla, thank you so much for accepting our invitation to be joining us today and to speaking to our audience about an Islamic worldview and why it's so important for our Islamic schools. Jazakallah khairan.
Well, thank you very much. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wassalamu ala Sayyidil Mursaleen. Wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Amma ba'du. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. And thank you very much, Dr. Khan, and all the esteemed, distinguished colleagues who are with us today. I'm honored to be with you. And I have been, because time is very limited, so I'll go straight into the discussion. I've been asked to address the following points. What does it mean to teach from an Islamic worldview? And why must Islamic schools teach from an Islamic worldview? What's the alternative if they're not teaching from that worldview? And more subsidiary questions, where are Australian schools as it relates to teaching from an Islamic worldview? Where do they need to go and how might they get there? So I've just put the timer on. Please excuse me if I have to go a little bit quicker through this because it's a very dense topic and time is of the essence, but I'll be more than happy to come back again another time and talk in more details about some of these issues. But before answering the questions, I think it's important to understand what is a worldview. Just I'll do that very briefly so that we are on the same page. A worldview is the set of beliefs about fundamental aspects of reality that ground and influence all one's perceiving, thinking, knowing, and doing. And so you could say it also refers to your set of answers to all the big questions of life. And as you will see later from the other esteemed colleagues, when they talk about bioscience, certainly there are a lot of big questions there. And they need to be answered either from an Islamic worldview or you will answer it from other worldviews. But also how you answer the big questions of life will inform how you think and behave in your day-to-day existence. And so if that is what a worldview is, what shapes our worldview? And again, I'm not going to be discussing these aspects in details, but just to give you an understanding. So it sets the scene for us. Now, there are different things or different aspects that shape a worldview or what your worldview. For example, epistemology, or our beliefs about the nature and the source of knowledge. And I'll say a little bit more about that. Or metaphysics, the beliefs about the ultimate nature of reality. Or cosmology, beliefs about the origin and nature of the universe, and so forth. These are important aspects or that influence and shape our worldview, your worldview, my worldview, the worldview that you are emanating in the classroom and the school indeed. And so your answers to these questions make up your worldview. If we take, for example, the epistemological beliefs or epistemology, and for us, the question would be, well, what is knowledge? If you look at the question of what is knowledge purely from a secular, materialistic perspective, then it will completely deny revelation. It will completely deny knowledge coming from wahi. And that, as you can see, is highly problematic for us. But if you look at it from an Islamic worldview perspective, then knowledge or the acquisition of knowledge, the gaining of knowledge comes from several sources, as I will point out. But also from epistemological beliefs, what is the basis of knowledge for knowledge? What is the difference between knowledge and faith? And in fact, what you believe about knowledge, where it comes from, how you gain it, its importance, its impact, affects what you accept as valid evidence, and therefore what you are willing to believe about particulars. And so take, for example, if knowledge about the origin of life is only acquired through a certain source of knowledge, and that is science, then that would be highly problematic for us. So for us, when we speak about epistemology only, it's belief or beliefs about the nature and sources of knowledge. And for us, that is revelation and reason, naql and aql. As Al-Ghazali, rahmatullah alayhi, said, revelation does not present anything that contradicts reason. Or as in this statement, never in our history have Muslim scholars argued that revelation alone is enough, as opposed to revelation illuminated by reason and tradition. Or from a theological perspective, the nature of the cosmos from an Islamic worldview perspective is purposive, serving a purpose of its creator, and doing so out of design. Now, these are important aspects of a worldview. So we could summarize and say Islamic worldview is a theistic and ethical worldview, which contrasts sharply with the secularist or atheistic alternatives. And I'll touch slightly on this as we go. Now, so in answering the first question, what does it mean to teach from an Islamic worldview then? Well, teaching from an Islamic worldview means approaching education through the lens of Islamic principles, values, and beliefs. And my esteemed colleagues later, when they give case studies of bioscience, they'll talk more about that. And that is viewing all knowledge as interconnected with the divine purpose of human existence. In other words, we don't see knowledge as separated. In fact, this idea of sacred and secular knowledge, two big circles, is problematic in our tradition. We have one big circle of knowledge, and it's the intent and the application that makes it one or the other. But also it involves permeating Islamic worldview into every aspect of the educational experience, rather than treating religious knowledge as a separate, disconnected subject. Here are some key elements of education from an Islamic worldview, or what an Islamic worldview of education would include. One, Tawheed, the oneness of Allah, which underpins an Islamic approach to teaching and learning, emphasizing the unity and interconnectedness of all creation under the sovereignty of Allah. Here, knowledge is understood as a means to grow closer to Allah. So there is a purpose behind knowledge. Knowledge is not for knowledge's sake, but it is to grow closer to Allah or it is to acquire, as some say, the ma'rifatullah, the cognizance of Allah, and to fulfill our role as His Khalifa on earth. But also it is purposeful education. Education from an Islamic worldview perspective is seen as a means to fulfill one's purpose of worshipping Allah and contributing positively to society. And so this focus is on a holistic development, nurturing the spiritual, moral, intellectual, physical, and so forth. But it's also it has an ethical and a moral framework. An Islamic worldview aims to instill values, morals, ethics in learners, guiding them to make ethical decisions and act responsibly in all areas. But also it would include tarbiyah, it will include a balanced education, it will focus on nurturing the fitrah, or the natural disposition of this learner or this human being. And also it has a focus on community and responsibility. Again, I don't have time to go through all of those, but this is just an appetizer perhaps. So we could say, in essence, teaching from an Islamic worldview involves cultivating a learning environment where faith and knowledge are seamlessly interwoven, and where the ultimate goal is to help learners develop as balanced, ethical, and spiritually aware individuals. So then why must Islamic schools teach from an Islamic worldview? And what is the alternative if they are not teaching from that worldview? This approach, that is from an Islamic worldview, nurtures learners' identity and sense of purpose, linking their knowledge and personal development with the principles of Islam, ethical values, and social responsibility. An Islamic worldview is fundamental to framing the development of curriculum in Islamic schools, which makes it purposeful and lays the foundation for active, transformative learning through careful consideration of knowledge. A clear worldview based on Tawheed can frame the how and the what of classroom instruction, and are vital to inculcate values that develop a balanced and mature student identity or learner identity through an Islamic schooling journey. Now, if an Islamic school does not teach from this worldview, learners may receive an education that is disconnected from their faith and identity. They might learn subjects solely through secular perspectives, potentially leaving gaps in their understanding of how their studies relate to their Islamic beliefs. And this disconnect could result in confusion, weakened faith, or diluted sense of identity, as students might struggle to reconcile their values with what they learn. And Bioscience and Science is a case study. Without an Islamic worldview, students may also lack the moral and ethical guidance that Islamic education seeks to provide, limiting their growth as well-rounded, spiritually conscious individuals. The alternative to an Islamic worldview, well, this is one of many alternatives. A naturalist worldview, or equivalently, you can say a materialistic worldview. Some may also talk about a secular worldview. Now, the naturalist or the materialist worldview believes that nothing exists outside of the physical universe, no spiritual realm, no God. And that has some serious ramifications on how we teach and why we teach and what we teach. In this worldview, as opposed to the Islamic worldview, there can be no absolute, externally valid standards of value and morality. And therefore, in terms of morality, it is not absolute anymore, but it is relative. And as we have seen in today's societies, it changes. What was not acceptable yesterday is acceptable today, right? Now, Islamic worldview, if understood properly and applied properly and adopted, it can create some original creation of knowledge and implications and applications of knowledge. And given that my esteemed colleagues will talk about science, I just want to give an example of when Islamic worldview is applied to, say, art and architecture, the outcome or the product is that of a genius, beautiful, original, creative output. So Islamic worldview in Islamic art and architecture, just as an example, so because you'll be talking about science. Now, when we speak about Islamic worldview and art, we speak about three things: all authentic Islamic art must reflect Tawheed. It must reflect the divine beauty. Inna Allaha jamilun yuhibbul jamal. Allah is beautified and He loves beauty. And it is uniconic, right? And uniconic art means it refuses to depict the divine in a direct form. So Islamic civilization said, well, we will produce our own art and architecture, but based on our worldview, and not simply mimic or imitate other, perhaps also equally beautiful art. Based on that, the result is stunning. And in fact, some of the most beautiful, if not the most beautiful architectures in the world are Islamic architecture. And this is just quick examples of the manifestation of an Islamic worldview in Islamic art and architecture. Just quickly go through it. It represents that oneness. It is a centered art. It's beautiful. It is original. Yes, it may have borrowed from other civilizations, but it then created its own distinct form of Islamic art and architecture.
We want you to be hydrated.
Okay.
Okay? Yes.
Oops. And one could, can you imagine if we were to do that with education also and Islamic schooling, not to be frightened of utilizing our Islamic worldview to come up with something that is magnificent, original, and beautiful. These just quick examples, right? Which you're all familiar with. And I'll go to, because of time. So now take, for example, the Islamic worldview and the learner. We have our own distinct worldview when it comes to the learner. For example, the idea that every newborn is born in the fitrah. This gives a drastically different mindset towards how we engage with the learner. And again, I don't have time to dwell on this, but ideally, it sees the learner as one who was born on innocence and purity. And therefore, they have certain rights upon us. And the idea that they are born with this fitrah gives us an extra responsibility of making sure that what we teach and how we teach continues to nurture their fitrah and not corrupt it, right? The idea of looking after the child is a trust and a responsibility. It's not just to focus on the intellectual aspect of the child, but more than that. Where are Australian schools as it relates to teaching from an Islamic worldview? Well, at the beginning phase, but quickly adopting this approach. And so take, for example, Malik Fahd Islamic School is one of the oldest and largest in Australia, and they have redesigned their vision, their mission, their teaching frameworks, their behavior policy, etc., according to an Islamic worldview. In fact, we have worked with them for 3 years to get to where they are now. But there are at least 8 other schools in Australia who are working with SITE towards achieving this objective. But we are getting there slowly. But the most important thing I would say is that there has been a mind shift, right? It was a struggle initially to get schools to accept the idea that just calling ourselves Islamic is not sufficient. But we need to question what it means to be Islamic and how to be Islamic indeed. And we are getting there. Now, where do they need to go to make it a reality? Well, they can start by gaining a deeper understanding of what is an Islamic worldview, what is an Islamic pedagogy, and what is the purpose and philosophy of Islamic education. Of course, SITE and other institutions offer courses on all of these. How might they get there? Well, strategic planning and vision setting. The schools need to go back to square one to define clear objectives based on an Islamic worldview. Otherwise, they will be wittingly or otherwise, unwittingly, they would be adopting secular mindsets, objectives, or visions without realizing. And that can then permeate across the school, and that can be problematic. Leadership commitment. This is a big issue. School leaders must be dedicated to the mission, modeling, and championing of Islamic worldview and values in decision-making and daily practice. One of the biggest obstacles we have found whilst working with Islamic schools is that if the board or the leaders of the Islamic school are not on board, then you're not going to get anywhere. So the board or the management of the school need to understand and appreciate the importance of Islamic worldview. And invest in educator leader training and development. How might they get there in just 1-2 minutes? Well, one way is, and this is what you'll be talking about in bioscience, curriculum integration. So Islamically enriched content to develop and adapt curriculum resources to reflect the Islamic worldview in science, in history, in literature, and so forth. But also to use educational framework that are fundamentally premised on Islamic worldview to structure learning experience that promotes spiritual and moral growth. And last but not least, to partnership with Islamic institutions that have started the journey or are on the journey, where we can learn from them and their experiences. I will end here. That's 17 minutes, not 15. I do apologize for the 2 extra minutes. And here are some references that I'm happy to share with you, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair.
Jazakallah khairan, Professor Abdullah. That is an expert there who's watching his time so carefully. MashaAllah, I really appreciate that. Really gained a lot. And I know that we don't have a lot of time for me to add on my own thoughts here, but I did drop the link for the Center for Islamic Thought and Education. Professor Abdullah, we really appreciate your joining us today and really setting up that foundation. I love the point that you made about, subhanAllah, that it's not just about supporting ourselves and making sure that we're protecting from doubts, which is very, very important. And we're going to talk a lot more about that. But you took it further in terms of describing the genius that can be produced when we are teaching from an Islamic worldview, as we see from the Islamic golden ages as well, subhanAllah. Jazakumullah khairan, Professor Abdullah. We look forward to having more speakers, our panelists, talk a little bit more to build on the foundation that you have set. Right now, I would like to ask everybody here to take a minute to look at your screen and answer these questions that we've got. I'm going to launch a poll right now. And we're going to get into now some of the practicality of the Bioscience and Islam curriculum that we're going to be speaking about. And let's launch this poll here. Do you see the poll right there on your screen? If you do, go ahead and start answering those questions. So the first one says, how confident do you feel in teaching evolution in a manner that fully integrates the Islamic worldview? And this can be, I know that we have administrators. I see a number of administrators from here in the US.
Evolution.
And is that a question? Russia? Okay. All right, so we've got some people here who've answered. We don't want to take too much time since we've got a number of other presenters, but it's always interesting to see what you've got. Take another 15 seconds to answer that. And there are 2 questions here. So the first one is, how confident do you feel in teaching evolution in a manner that fully integrates the Islamic worldview? And the second one is, how confident do you feel in teaching students how it is that a human and chimp DNA is 98% the same, again, in a manner that fully integrates the Islamic worldview? Maybe a similar question there. And I'll share the answer. So we've still got some people answering. All right, get it in. 5 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, so I'm going to end the poll. Thank you for everybody who was able to get to their screen and share that. Do you see the poll answers there on your screen? I'm watching Sama's face, Aisha's face. Yes. Okay, great. Okay, so we have about 50% of those who were able to answer. We had 70% of the participants joining us answered the poll. Alhamdulillah, that's pretty good. The other 30% were eating breakfast or feeding their children dinner. So we got about 50% that were somewhat confident and 26% not confident at all. That's about 75% who are really feeling like, they could probably use some support in answering that. And again, similar in the second question too. Jazakallah khairan for taking the time out to respond to that and to really think about how confident you yourself feel in addressing these questions. Inshallah, we're going to hear from our next speaker, who will speak a little bit more about cultivating Muslim scientists who think from within an Islamic worldview from the time that they're in your schools, inshallah. So Dr. Omar Qureshi is our next panelist. panelist. He's the Director of Integrated Curriculum at Yaqeen Institute. He earned his Bachelor of Arts in Microbiology and subsequently completed his Master's in Education in Curriculum and Instruction from and Science Education, both from the University of Missouri, Columbia. Later, he earned his PhD in Cultural and Educational Policy Studies with a specialization in Philosophy of Education from Loyola University in Chicago in 2016. In the field of Islamic sciences, Dr. Qureshi has studied various subjects, including Islamic law, logic, kalam theology, Islamic philosophy, Islamic legal theory, Quranic sciences and exegesis, hadith, nomenclature, prophetic biography, and Islamic history. He was also previously a science teacher in Islamic schools and K-12 Islamic schools, as well as a principal of a large Islamic school here in Chicago. So he's had many hats and comes to you as both, I know he wouldn't call himself this, but we will acknowledge him as an expert in this field. And also a colleague who has been in your shoes at some point. Dr. Omar, it's really a pleasure to have you on, and we look forward to your presentation or comments on this.
All right. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam ajma'in. Can everybody hear me? Thumbs up. All right. It's wonderful to be here this evening or morning and any time zone in between, depending on your place on the earth. MashaAllah, it's great to have this, and I want to thank Dr. Shaza for putting this together, a global type of program, so it takes a lot to coordinate, and it's very wonderful to be here with all the panelists as well, and alhamdulillah, it's very nice to, and I want to thank Professor Mohamed Abdalla for his wonderful presentation, very comprehensive too. He said it all in 17 minutes. So it was great, very edificatory. So alhamdulillah. So it's a lot of ways to start here, but I guess what I want to kind of talk about tonight with everybody here and get their thoughts too. So please do send your thoughts, questions, but more your thoughts and your own insights into the chat as we talk tonight or this morning. So the idea is that, is there an urgent problem to teaching Islam from or having Islamic schools to teach from an Islamic worldview? Is there an issue that this is addressing? And of course, from my own experience and the experience of all others, I do believe there is a problem, and perhaps an urgent problem in many regards. Right now, Islamic school, and for a number of years, they've been in what I call first responder mode, right? Which is, we just want to get the people to the emergency room, so to speak. So Islamic schools are considered emergency rooms, and while it's wonderful, and it's a big blessing to have that type of those type of institutions that can support our communities and our children. Nonetheless, we do have to grow out of that, and I think that.
Sorry, Dr. Omar, I muted you by mistake in trying to mute someone else. I apologize.
Oh, okay. Yeah, if we can make sure I get everybody's muted, that'll be great. All right. So hence, moving out of or growing out of, our communities are growing by all measures. It seems like the need for Islamic schools is increasing in the Anglophone world. And our communities, our children who graduate from Islamic schools are having children. They want to put their children in Islamic schools. So the need is increasing. Yet if you look, the parents also are and our world, are changing to the extent that they're looking for, the need now is beyond first responder mode. And I think a solution is what Professor Mohamed Abdalla has offered, which is teaching from an Islamic worldview. And it's not just the religious subjects, it's all subjects, right? And there's various models of integration. And what's been very common in Islamic schools has to be this, what Professor Nadim Maimon calls appendage model, which is, we teach all the subjects and then we append Islamic studies. And, what that is created is this fragmented model, and students are having are being challenged with how does this all work together? And I think teaching from Islamic worldview will help them towards putting all of this together and getting into many deeper questions. And so if we were to, for example, if you look at this question, how do we answer this question? And it's an empirical fact for all intents and purposes that the human DNA and the DNA from chimpanzees and apes is 98% the same. Now, there are some studies that bring the number down to 80%, but even 80% is quite a high number. What does this similarity mean? And for many evolutionary biologists holding the position of the assumption of common ancestry, this is clear proof. In many cases, people will say, undisputable proof of the fact that humans and chimpanzees have a common ancestor. How do we answer this question, right? As Muslims, how do we give an answer from the Islamic worldview? Not an answer that is a first responder answer, which is, just believe in God. The Quran says different. We need an answer that moves beyond that in the sense of, well, how do we make sense of similarity? What does similarity between organisms mean, right? And so one of the chapters that this edited volume that's coming out, inshallah, in the future, is addressing this very question from an Islamic worldview. What does similarity mean? It turns out that our Muslim scholars, and not just Muslim scholars, but Africans and African civilization, you see the Greeks, you see the Chinese, you see Far East civilizations. It's very interesting that Muslim scholars have always identified these similarities between humans and apes, al-qird, in Arabic. And to the point where one of the great scholars at Damiri says that that al-qird kal insan, that the ape is it's virtually a human. This is not a new discovery. So how is it that we answer this? And yet he never concluded common ancestry from this. So we have a lot in our Islamic tradition that we can use and we can be part of and we can use to answer a lot of these type of questions, right? That come about in a very satisfying manner, intellectually satisfying manner. And then the students can be confident, right, in their faith. Another question that comes up is, were Adam and Eve, were they real people? Many, is the Genesis story, is it mythic and archetypal? Is it, they weren't real people, they were just archetypes? In light of evolution, many Christians are adopting this very position that they said, Adam and Eve weren't real people. They were just, archetypal, and so this is their way of kind of answering or dealing with the Darwinian notions of human origins. And this, position, if Muslims adopt this position, is from the Islamic worldview, it's incredibly problematic, right? Even the status of a person's Islam is at stake if they adopt this type of position. But you see here that these questions are impacting many faith groups that are out there. And so, is this a way to answer this question, right? So what we're seeing here is also our students are faced with a culture where religion is seen as, irrational, whereas science is seen as rational, right? And so when you look at our epistemology, any Muslim who's studied in our tradition will probably find that conclusion to be the most absurd conclusion, because we have a strong and a very rich tradition of logic, and up until this day, and Muslim students in the madrasas, and Muslim students in the medical schools, the Madistans and all of these different places and observatories, they would all study a very strong and lengthy regimen of various texts and logic. But yet we're in a culture where religion is seen as irrational and science is seen as rational, and Muslims have we internalize this discourse to a great extent. And to give you one example, there was a study done in 2013 looking at Pakistani physicians in
You're
the
welcome.
United States, and 23 physicians participated in this. And it's very interesting because of the 23, 12 of those physicians held that humans are a product of evolution from prior animals. And only one of those 23 physicians rejected it, that position, right? And then the others, were kind of unsure about this. These are physicians now, right? Muslim physicians. And so, this is important to keep in mind. How are Muslims who are going to be graduating from Islamic schools, a lot of our children, alhamdulillah, enter into the medical field. How are they going to answer this question, right? And so the question arises here is that, one common approach that I've encountered in my personal encounters with Muslim physicians in Chicago, for example, some of them, they were saying that, actually, this is an evolutionary biologist who was saying this too, Muslim evolutionary biologist, and saying, Omar, when I get up in the morning and I'm a Muslim, I do wudu, I'm praying to my Lord, I'll make dua, I'll pray the Fajr prayer, I'll eat breakfast, say the du'as for exiting the house, saying the du'as for riding, getting in my car, all those things. I arrive at my university, go into my lab, and I open the door, and before I enter my laboratory, I leave my faith at the door, and then I enter the lab and I conduct my research. And he was trying to say that his way of engaging this issue was to basically say, religion has nothing to say about science, and I have to leave it at the door, and God somehow doesn't exist in the laboratory. And then when I leave my laboratory and I enter the world again outside of my laboratory, I'm a Muslim, right? This is a very this is psychologically, it's going to create what's called cognitive dissonance, when it's someone who, if you can't resolve these issues, it creates a lot of anxiety, a lot of confusion. And if you have, and so is this the way, how we want to engage these issues? And for me, coming from the Islamic worldview, absolutely not. Right. And so I think, to sum up here, one aspect, as Professor Mohammed explained, of any worldview is epistemology, and hence the importance of teachers to understand what is epistemology, and as a Muslim, what are the Islamic intellectual traditions' conceptions of epistemology? And epistemology basically says, what is knowledge? How do we know what we know? What's the nature of knowledge? What is certainty? What is all knowledge at the same, does all knowledge have the same epistemological strength? The answer is no, but how do we relate knowledge from our senses, knowledge from our intellect, and then knowledge from wahi, knowledge from our dreams, right? There's all these different sources of knowledge. How do they all fit together? Well, it turns out, alhamdulillah, our scholars, Jazakumullah khairan, have done a wonderful job in answering all those questions in great, excruciating detail. And we're not saying teachers have to know it to that degree, but they do have to be aware of, as Muslims in their own personal life, and when, especially as teachers, and to our students, to present a very coherent account of Islam and the knowledge that they're teaching, whether it's social studies, math, whether it's geometry, whether it's physics, chemistry, biology, whether it's English, literature, all of these type of subjects, they have to know their epistemology. That's step number one. And hence, this curriculum addresses and, I guess, centralizes epistemology, and then presents how do we understand the nature of scientific knowledge as it relates to revealed knowledge and our creedal beliefs as well. So with that, I will end, Dr. Shaza, if that's okay, and then we'll go on to the next presenters, and hopefully looking forward to the questions and conversations later in this evening. Jazakumullah khairan.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Omar, for really sharing how it relates practically, especially with that actual example of the Muslim scientist who says when he puts on his lab coat, that's where he leaves, or when he, when he puts that on, that's it, taking off kind of like a mask for his Muslimness, subhanAllah. And I think we all, as Islamic school educators, can agree that that is absolutely not what we want to be teaching our students. And I mean, the question remains, right? Like when we don't teach something explicitly, and there are questions, and we know that there's that cognitive dissonance that Dr. Omar spoke about, what are they going to do with that? And they become adults, and they become scientists, and they become physicians, or they become whoever in whatever field they are, putting on that lab coat or whatever other metaphorical element of their profession there is, leaving behind their Islamic values and their Islamic thoughts because they just couldn't ever figure out how to reconcile it, when subhanAllah, our tradition is so rich. And we know as Muslims that that there is no such discordance between what Allah has revealed to us and what is that truth and what is out here in our world as well. So Jazakallah khairan, Dr. Omar, for sharing. Um, Dr. Aasim is our next speaker, and I wasn't able to get that pull up. Dr. Aasim, can I ask it here in the chat if it's something that's or would you like to ask the question in the chat after I introduce you? All right. Okay, so alhamdulillah, really honored to have as our next panelist, Dr. Aasim Padela, who, as I mentioned, is also the founder of the Initiative on Islam and Medicine, and also the PI of this project that has resulted in the creation of the Bioscience and Islam Curriculum. Dr. Padela is an emergency medicine physician and bioethics scholar focused on advancing health equity through research at the intersection of medicine, ethics, and religion. He serves as vice chair for research in emergency medicine at the Medical College of Wisconsin and leads the Initiative on Islam and Medicine. Dr. Padela's work covers patient-centered research, faith-based public health messaging, clinical ethics, and Islamic theology. His extensive academic background includes an MD, MSc, and a fellowship in clinical ethics. He has authored over 150 scholarly articles and books on Islamic bioethics, including Maqasid al-Sharia and Biomedicine in 2024, as well as a 2022 publication that he co-authored, and we will be raffling off at the end, so stick around. He'll be raffling off 5 of those physical copies that we will mail, inshallah, anywhere in the world to 5 winners, inshallah. Dr. Padela, thank you for joining, of course, as the host, co-host of this session. Very interested to hear from you, all of what you have to say, as well as why this Bioscience and Islam Curriculum. Jazakallah khairan.
وإياكم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Jazakallah khair, everybody, for coming. I appreciate the 2 esteemed panelists before me. We just try to be short in time here, just ground ourselves in kind of what the context is for this curriculum. I appreciate that Dr. Omar mentioned the Muslim biologist, but I had 2 questions that I put in the chat here for you all. We can create a poll. I'm not as savvy as others, but so I'll speak them out. And before I do that, I will say it is sometimes very disconcerting when you're speaking to a large black screen audience. I don't even know if people are doing, what they're doing at this time. So I'd appreciate it, for me at least, if you guys can come off a little bit, because we all are here and it doesn't feel like a community if it's just black screens. So that said, the question I asked in the chat were 2. The first question was, if a physician was to offer you a treatment to live 1,000 years, would you take that treatment? And you don't have to answer, so we don't have a poll. The second question is, should a Muslim physician then, if this is part of our armamentarium, offer that treatment? In many societies that are Muslim, we pride ourselves in wanting our children to become physicians. And we tell our children that they should go into medicine because it is a profession that not only is noble and esteemed, but it is really dealing with people in crises, right? When they are facing maladies. And so we do that. And alhamdulillah, I know in Australia, 3.2% of the population is Muslim. I'm sure that there's probably 6% who are physicians. And if you look at the United States, it's similar, right? That there's a overrepresentation in the medical field by the Muslim demographic. The question becomes, as Professor Abdullah said, well, what makes that Muslim physician different from a non-Muslim physician? The first instance when people enter medical school, the first experience they have is in the anatomy lab. They go to see a dead body, and they're asked to dissect that body. I ask you, when that Muslim student who went to your Muslim school or your Islamic school and went to college goes and has that experience, do they see that body differently than their colleagues or not? As you're teaching, as your and we're parents, some of us, right? As you're teaching as parents or as a school teachers, change them in some way that when they enter that class, they see that thing differently than anybody else. If the answer is no, then perhaps there's a shortcoming within our teaching, both in the house and in our schools. Because what's in front of them is a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that deserves dignity by itself, the body, whether or not there is a soul within it. And the exercise that they're going to engage in seeing that body is to dissect the body so that they can figure out what morphological mistake, so to speak, led to that person's demise. So the entire episode of learning is based on a notion that there is a body that is physical in nature and had a malformation or a physiological issue, a disorder that led to demise. But for the student who's in that, the Muslim student who's in that classroom, they would say that body no longer has a soul perhaps attached to it because their ajal came, which was written for them before they ever came into this world. And if your student does not have that understanding, as I said, then perhaps there's something wrong with the way that we're teaching. And later on, as in the question I posed, if that physician, who is a Muslim physician, is offering a treatment that can allow you as a patient to live for 1,000 years, then perhaps there's something wrong with their notion of what Islam is about and what the profession of medicine is for. So that is my entry in starting to get you. I know it's very late here, maybe it's early there, thinking about this in a practical way, right? That something about what we're doing here today should inform, right? Sorry, should form the Muslim differently. It is not simply about informing. This art of teaching is not about knowledge and skill acquisition, but rather it is about formation of characters and mindsets, and as Professor Abdullah said, worldviews, such that the product of that is somewhat different, is somehow different in quality than the product of another educational system. So the question is that, are we actually churning and converting that Muslim into something as Islamic? The curriculum that you have and that you will all, inshallah ta'ala, imbibe from somehow in some way is trying to address the fact that as physicians, we never talk about the human being. I'm in medical school right now. I teach in a medical school. We don't talk about the human being. We talk about the patient. We talk about the body. We talk about the disease. We talk about what health is. But we don't talk about what the human being is. You can go through an entire medical education and never conceptually deal with the notion of what is this human being. And this creation that we would say is of creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is what this curriculum is focused on. I know that Sister Aisha is going to take you through that at the end if I don't take too much more time. But that gap, that lacuna is what this curriculum was trying to do. The curriculum was trying to engage with this fundamental existential question for people who are potentially will embark on the medical enterprise to think about what the human being is, those 5 big questions that you'll learn about in a second, but to do so from a religious and a scientific lens so that people go into that first encounter with the body, right? With a lens, with some glasses, with a prism, with an epistemic framework, shall I say, through which they see something different. Not just they see something different, they are something different in that encounter. So that when they become physicians or scientists, right, or just a community person, that they are somewhat somehow different than the person next door, that their Muslimness has become somehow Islamicness. And I think I saved us 3 minutes, so I will stop there, inshallah ta'ala, and let the other panelists go from there. Barakallahu feekum. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you so much, Dr. Aasim. I think that that point that you raise about, I mean, I've never thought about that, but of course we've all interfaced with medical professionals if we ourselves are not one, as I'm not, and never thought about the fact that they don't talk about the human being, that it's about the patient. So subhanAllah, is that something that we want to replicate in our own classrooms and with our own students as they enter into these professions or otherwise, subhanAllah. And inshallah, this curriculum is able to create that shift so that we are talking about and thinking about the human being and thinking about them in a fundamentally different way than what the traditional way is to be learning about it nowadays in our curriculum, in high school and medical colleges even. Our next presenter, Sister Aisha Basith, worked very closely on helping create the teacher materials, being able to translate what was generated from the team of bioscientists, that the experts who really explored the different units that are part of this curriculum that inshallah Sister Aisha will go through, and being able to bring it into a product, if you will, that Islamic school educators in high school, Islamic school high school educators can utilize, inshallah. So I'm really excited, Sister Aisha, for you to share more about this curriculum, what it is and what it is not. But before I do, I'd like to introduce you properly. Sister Aisha Basith is a seasoned educator with experience teaching students grade 5 through 12. She has her bachelor's in education and biology and has been a teacher for 19 years. She's taught high school honors in AP biology and also has experience teaching in public schools and Islamic schools, as well as homeschooling. Sister Aisha served 3 years in an administrative role. And in addition, Sister Aisha studied in an Alamiya program under traditional scholars in Chicago and online and abroad. She's currently a biology tutor and teaches Tajweed, Quran, Arabic, and Tafsir classes to local women and children in Peoria, Illinois, where she currently resides. Sister Aisha, Jazakallah khairan for joining us and for all the work that you did on this project. And we look forward to learning more about this curriculum, really specifically. And as you present, Sister Aisha, I want to remind our participants that, first of all, I liked Dr. Aasim asked folks to join with their cameras on, and I really appreciate those who are able to do that. For those here who still haven't turned on their cameras, please do so. And remember, as you're listening to this curriculum and Sister Aisha's presentation, one of the questions we're going to have in just 15 minutes or so, we're going to share a survey with you to ask you, like, what are the impediments for you in implementing this, and what are the supports that you need? You're a critical piece in helping us make this curriculum more relevant. This has been like a 3-year project. I'm not sure that anybody on this panel has shared really the scope of this project, Sister Aisha. So I don't want to take more from your time, but just wanted to share that, to listen with intent, to reflect and share more feedback about how to implement this, inshallah. Sister Aisha, Jazakallah khairan. Assalamu alaikum.
Bismillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulullah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, everyone. So I'm going to try to make my part quick so that way we can get to kind of the more interesting and more feedback portion. But what I'd like to start with is a reflective activity. I'd like to ask all of you, what do you think that students are going into, right? We've heard kind of the situation at the moment, and looking forward, right? So most of our students, we're thinking about they're in high schools, right? So moving forward, these students are going into an environment that's going to be conducive to our beliefs and teachings of Islam, or do we feel like it's going to be an environment where everything is going to be fine and dandy, right? And we're going to continue to stay strong in our deen. Or, so thinking about that, we have to look forward to what is that environment going to do to our students in the future, right? And so really, when I look at this, to me, I see bullies, right? And these are bullies that are going to be on campus, right? These are bullies of liberalism and secularism, and perhaps others that we haven't really discussed here today. And so when we think about these things, right, we see that these big bullies on campus are actually hurting and wounding many of our students. And of course, we teach them, you know, the theory of stay away from the bullies, right? Avoid them as much as possible. And, you know, sometimes they're just unavoidable. We can't always just kind of duck and hide. And in such cases, students would need something practical, right? Some specific techniques for self-defense, right? To be able to then support themselves. So similar to like a martial arts class, right? Where we teach specific techniques and forms of how to defend themselves, right? This is very similar to what this curriculum actually is, right? This curriculum of the Exploring Bioscience and Islam is a curriculum that, similar to what Dr. Aasim was saying, is focused on fundamental questions about the human being, right? A kind of very practical and applicable self-defense course that allows our students to then be able to defend their iman and defend their ability to comprehend things that they encounter in their environment. So I want to kind of go through very specifically what this curriculum entails. And so here we see there are specific skill sets that our students are going to develop going through this curriculum, right? Again, those self-defense mechanisms will be these specific skills, right? Students develop a range of intellectual and analytical and practical skills to be able to face whatever they face in the future, in future environments. So here, students will learn to synthesize Islamic theological teachings and concepts that then will also interact with scientific concepts, right? So that way we can then create an integrated worldview, similar to as Dr. Abdullah had mentioned earlier. And then we are also trying to focus on evaluating the validity of scientific and philosophical arguments through evidence-based reasoning. And we also want students to develop the ability to critically evaluate perspectives and recognize the strengths and limitations of each framework, right? And that's a very key thing that students need to understand, that science does have its limitations, right? It's not the end all be all just because this is what science, quote unquote, says. And what we really want to cause through this curriculum is a frame shift, right? A change in mindset to understand specific things that perhaps we haven't been specifically and directly taught in the classroom. So first and foremost, to obtain an understanding rather, that knowledge, both religious and scientific, is not always conclusive, right? Students are usually told this is what it is, right? And so usually they just take it as face value. But we want students to gain skills to really analyze knowledge and see, well, is this conclusive? Am I obligated to believe in this and take this for face value? Or can I be critical about it, right? And if I can be critical about it, how true or is it false, right? And then we have that range. The other thing is to gain familiarity with epistemology, right? Dr. Omar really talked a little bit about what epistemology is and how to really understand it. And Dr. Mohammed, or Professor Mohammed, I should say, also alluded to this and discussed this to an extent. And so here, we really want students to understand that there are various sources of knowledge, right? Primarily revelatory, rational, and empirical, and really use wahi as a genuine source of knowledge, right? Not something to be discounted, or understanding that it can be integrated with the scientific evidences that we have. And then last but not least, to recognize that the sources of knowledge is all source of knowledge is really knowledge is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And such religious and scientific knowledge cannot conflict in reality, right? So since all knowledge comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the knowledge we have is obviously going to be something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed us to have, right? And so when we look at science and the things that science has interpreted, right, we have to understand that not all of that is, again, fully complete, right? Science is evolving with the amount of information that we are available, right? If we think about things like embryology, right, that we had barely knowledge of, and through scientific development, now we have a lot more knowledge of. But thinking about that, do we still have information that we can discover? Do we know everything at this point, right? So that kind of evolution of science is a frame shift that we want students to have. So getting into the direct understanding of what this curriculum entails, right? So as Dr. Aasim mentioned, there are 5 fundamental questions of the human being that our curriculum will take a look at. And that is, first and foremost, the question is about understanding the humankind, right? The origins of humankind. So this is where we're going to talk about evolution and God's special creation. And that's usually a hot topic, right? Of how do we explain things in evolution that have such strong evidences, right? And Dr. Omar had alluded to that as well. And again, is that conclusive knowledge? Then we also talk about what is the human's essential nature, right? And here we will talk about the topics of neuroscience, artificial intelligence, and the soul. And then we go into what is the human's future. Again, kind of similar to what Dr. Aasim had posed us as a question, human enhancement and transhumanism, and how much can we change the human being? What is acceptable? And what is the purpose of doing so, right? And then we talk about, are human actions predetermined, right? And so in that predetermination, we're going to discuss fate, as well as how does that connect with science? Well, with genetic determinism, right? And last but not least, are humans unique in the universe? And so here, the topic we'll discuss is science and theological inquiry about extraterrestrial life. And in that topic, we'll really discuss, what is the intent behind a scientist when they go into specific aspects of inquiry, right? So what I want to do is be able to walk you through the curriculum itself. Let me see here. Here we go. So as you can see, so walking you through the website. So as I mentioned, that this is the curriculum that is presented. And so this curriculum is actually free sourced. So for educational purposes, for all of you teachers to take advantage of. And so going to the website, I just wanted to mention some of the things that are there ready and available for teachers to be able to use, and really express how clear the organization is, so that way it is ready for teachers to be able to apply in their classrooms. So first and foremost, these are the various units. As I mentioned, these were the unit topics and the 5 fundamental questions that are going to be discussed. And so just clicking here on Unit 2, how did human beings come about? So this is where we discuss evolution. And again, I'm picking this unit specifically because of the fact that this is a hot topic and a lot of teachers struggle to teach this to their students. And so here you'll see that each unit comes with a presentation slide deck, which has correlating lessons to it, which we'll get to in a second, as well as an instructional video, right? So you are able to watch the scholars and those who are professionals in their field teach this lesson, so that way you gain that knowledge to be able to then translate that to your students as well. And then there are lessons that accommodate, right? And are you guys able to see my screen if I switch screens? Okay, perfect. So here you'll see that each lesson is outlined with the time it takes for each lesson, as well as all of the instructional outcomes and all of the materials that are needed. And you will see that the teacher facilitation is mentioned is very scripted. So that way teachers have a very easy time being able to teach this, especially if they're not able to find the correct words or be able to explain it in a proper way. This will allow it for them to be able to go through and really see how easy it is to explain this to the students. The one thing I want to mention is at the bottom here, you'll see all the lessons come with a connection, right? So here, biological connection explains how you're able to connect this to topics in biology, so that way you can integrate it easily within the curriculum that you have present in your schools today. And the last thing that I want to mention here is the fact that there are supplemental activities as well, right? So each lesson also comes with an activity, so that way it can be interactive, right? It's not just theory-based. Like I mentioned, it's very focused and practical. So that way students are not only learning, but they're applying at the same time as well. And as teachers, we all have to take assessments to make sure that students are learning, right? The assessments are available for you. The materials are available for you. So that way we've made it as easy as possible to try to put this into your classrooms. With that, inshallah, I will leave it there, inshallah. So if there's any questions, then we can go ahead and discuss those. But I just wanted to keep it short and quick, so that way you are able to see what the curriculum actually entails. Jazakallah khair.
Thank you so much, Sister Aisha. Jazakallah khairan. I think that preview really allows our participants here to see how comprehensive this free curriculum is, inshallah. And beyond that, we want to be able to, inshallah, support you through additional training if you need it. Sister Aisha has shared that there's a lot there as it is. But inshallah, we're here to support you additionally as well. Before we share with you the survey and the professional development opportunity, I'd like to have our brother Habeeb Quadri, whose team has worked on creating these teacher materials, of which Sister Aisha Basith is a part, talk to you about some of the key takeaways from this, and as well as alluding to the PD opportunity. Brother Habeeb Quadri is an educator, author, and youth activist. He has a bachelor's in teaching of history and master's in school administration. He is an elementary school superintendent, actually, the principal part, I guess that's old, and part-time staff at Harvard Graduate School of Education Professional Development Programs. Habeeb was a nationally recognized award winner as principal as well, mashallah. And Habeeb has served a 4-year term at the Harvard Graduate School of Education Principal Advisory Board. He has his own consulting company called High Quality Educational Consulting. I think many of you may know him from having recently visited Australia as well as a speaker. And so really happy to have you joining us, Brother Habeeb. It's always energizing to hear from you. So it's kind of why we put you at the end, Brother Habeeb. Bring up that energy level again, inshallah. Jazakallah khairan for being with us.
Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, rabbil alameen, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulil kareem. I'll just take 3.5 minutes. So the first and foremost, why do we do what we do? Why do we educate? We educate our kids so they can know Allah. They could worship Allah and seek His pleasure. But the situation is in the same way when we tell kids is also we want to seek the bounties of Allah. رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. So to have the best in this world and the best in the hereafter. But as they seek bounties, there are certain topics that sometimes can also derail them from their belief or could cause some questions in their hearts. And we want to build that yaqeen. And one of those topics is science. So it's very important to get Muslim scientists with the ulama and make sure that the information that they're learning is proper with the Muslim worldview on it. But at the same time, as you get this, you have sometimes these mashallah educated high intellectuals. How do you make it and disseminate it in a way for many of our high school students to get this, and our teachers to take the information and disseminate it in the proper way for these kids to get the knowledge they need, and also for the teachers to also understand and say, I see what this is going and how we want to approach this. So with that, so the third aspect of it was, have this, the scholars, the scientists with the educators get the information, but after you get the information and you put it in the proper way from a teacher's handbook, a regular, the book, to assessments, but sometimes you need someone to be like, well, how do we make sure this happens? And this is where the idea of professional development, just like any curriculum we all might get, but sometimes you want some more clarity. You might read everything, and this is where the next step that we wanted to also share with you with ISLA, that we are going to provide professional development courses for all of you to go ahead and participate. And this way, as you guys are also implementing, we will learn. And we wanted to have some learning communities where we could share, because we, again, this is open source. But if we could take the things and your experiences and share it with us, are things that went well that you could share with others, we could all be successful, inshallah, because it's for the kids, and we, inshallah, could get Allah's blessings for it. So as I wanted to make it short, as you've heard everything, and we want to make sure we have time for you guys to give your thoughts and your input. So I want to give it back to Dr. Shaza, but Dr. Shaza, you could maybe kind of give some more information. Is there like a set date right now, or months that they're thinking that you could maybe share with us, so people will know that it's not done yet, it's only the beginning.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Brother Habeeb. I like you throwing the question back at us. We do have a couple of dates set, and we have spoken to some of the teams there in Australia, knowing that you have made so much progress with teaching from an Islamic worldview, mashallah. And of course, I see our brother Osama Robert Townsend, who has signed up and taken the PD over the summer, as well as others, mashallah, so dedicated from here in the US too. So we don't want to undermine our US colleagues either, but we've set up the dates for the professional development, and really interested, again, you can go right in. Sister Rauda has shared, I shared a link there for the curriculum. But if you want to have some additional support on the professional development, this is we're charging a little bit here. Not because anybody's trying to make money from this, but just to increase that commitment level, inshallah. We know how many webinars we sign up for, how many different projects and programs we sign up for, but that level of commitment isn't always there. So inshallah, with a nominal investment, we ask you to commit, inshallah, to getting the professional development if you're ready to and want to implement this, or even if you want to consider how to implement this into your scope and sequence. We know that some of the staff at Malik Fahad Academy, for example, are working on renewing their scope and sequence, for example. So right here, I've got the QR code in the chat. I will place the link, inshallah. Once I'm not sharing my screen, I'll place the link to this. And there's a discount code for you all right now because you have joined. Inshallah, we'll share it with Brother Abdullah, with Said, with all of our collaborators here to get $40 off, US dollars off. I'm not sure what that comes out to in all of your different localities, but it ends up then being 10 US dollars. And for example, Brother Robert, you were on the summer PD. This is going to be a little bit different. We're really going to customize the professional development on January 28th and 29th, 2025. For the US time, you'll see it when you go to the Zephi checkout. For the US, it's January 27th and 28th, 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. And in Australia, that's January 28th and 29th in the morning time for you all, inshallah, during your professional development days. So go ahead, Habeeb.
I just want to also everyone who's out there, just to realize this PD. So we've already worked and did this presentation to about 50 kids in the city of Chicago, and 200 medical students, our future doctors at medical school in Malaysia. So just want to tell you that there has been already some process in there, but again, as we're implementing it more, we wanted to kind of share with you the presentations. I just want them to realize this is not just slowly a pilot and this PD. This is already tried. We want to keep on developing, but just like educators, we always want to make it better and better and better. And that's why coming together, sharing is caring. Just make sure you follow through.
Thank you so much, Brother Habeeb. That's a really good point. Again, this is a 3-year project that involved first bioscientists and scholars. When you go to the website, you can see the scholars who are part of creating these curriculum units, experts in their field in addressing. And I was able to be like a fly on the wall in their chats, in some of their chats, really deliberating over, the different perspectives. Somebody's asked here in the chat, how do we engage with different theologians and Muslim scientists' perspectives on certain aspects? This is all things that these scholars have done. And then Habeeb's team at High Quality Educational Consultants have then taken that material and brought it into what is usable for our Islamic school teachers. Yes, Dr. Aasim, go ahead.
I just want to comment for the audience, and I noticed the chat and also in the metaphors that we're using. It's important to recognize that what we're not trying to do is give people a singular right answer. This is not a conversation that will end by the time someone takes a 3-hour session. Rather, we're trying to equip them with something that they can, a framework, a lens, a worldview that they can take with them as things change in the world, as knowledge about sciences changes, right? So I want you to recognize it's not that we come up with, okay, this is at the end of the day, here's the fatwa on what you should think about evolution. Rather, we're trying to give people a way to think. We're trying to teach them how to reason, right? That's the goal. And particularly at an age when people are in high school, that's what's going to be durable, right? Not the answer, but rather the way that you approach a question and the way that you engage with knowledge sources. And so I just wanted to underscore that if that wasn't very clear. I don't want you to come to a professional level workshop and think that we're giving you the answer, but rather we're helping you to develop people's minds again, right? And habitus towards knowledge.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Aasim. So inshallah, I'd like to now ask us to take a minute. I'm just pulling up my screen again here to take this survey, inshallah. And inshallah, for those of you who are interested, Dr. Aasim has offered to give away 5 copies, signed copies, and we'll mail it if you're in Australia or Turkey or wherever you are to these winners. Inshallah, we're going to, right after this, I want to just share because we're getting to the end and people get, obviously, you have a lot of things to do, but we do want to have that opportunity. We'll have 5 to 7 minutes to talk with the experts. We'll do some breakout rooms if we can get to that quickly, or we'll do a whole group discussion. But go ahead and take a picture of this QR code if you can. If you don't need the QR code, I will share it in the link after I'm done sharing the screen. So after you take 2 minutes to fill out the survey, it's just asking questions so that we can understand where you're at in terms of thinking about this Islam and bioscience, or this Bioscience and Islam curriculum. And then we'll do the conversation. Inshallah, I ask for just, I think safely 10 minutes extra of this time. So instead of 90 minutes, 100. And we'll conclude at 40 after the hour. Well, actually, Australia's interesting, 14 and a half time out. Okay, we'll end 10 minutes after the scheduled time, inshallah, if you're able to stay. All right, so I'm going to stop that share so that I can pull up the link to the, just in case if you needed that. All right, and Dr. Rhoda, I think you can see how many people have responded there. Take a couple minutes.
Because I think that the QR code goes to your retreat survey.
Oh, well, that's not what we want you to respond to. I'm so sorry. There's several QR codes on my presentation form. Okay, so let's not use that QR code. Thank you for checking that out. Let's use this link right here in the chat, please. Do you see the link for the chat, the survey right there? Dr. Halima, I've just pasted it in the chat. I'm giving it a thumbs up right there in the chat, Dr. Halima.
That's correct.
Okay, alhamdulillah. Happy to see some familiar faces from Australia too, Brother Dylan. Assalamu alaikum. I'm going to give it 1 more minute. And we'll use some of what you're thinking about in responding to that survey to talk in the breakout rooms. Inshallah, I asked our presenters to join a breakout room. You'll be able to see who's there. So if you see another one of our presenters there, just go to another one. What barriers do you have to implementing this curriculum? How can we support you in implementing the curriculum? And what questions do you still have about the curriculum? And we'll just take 5 minutes, inshallah. I know it's going to be a brief conversation, but at least we're all going to be taking some notes, inshallah, and we'll come back together and share the 5 winners of this randomly selected winners from the survey who will receive the books, and inshallah we'll be back in touch with you about the PD. All right. For the purposes of time, we will go ahead and create these breakout rooms. I invite you to please, oh, they're all in one room. Okay, sorry. Let me do that again. There you go. So you've all been assigned to a room. There's just 5 rooms, inshallah. And I asked the unassigned co-host to please choose a room to join. Do you see where you can join, Dr. Asim, Dr. Omar, Habeeb, and Aisha? Maybe Dr. Asim, go to room 1. Dr. Omar, go to room 2. Sister Aisha, room 3. Brother Habeeb, room 4. And I'll go to room 5, and we'll have 5 minutes and come back. Or Dr. Rhoda, can I have you go to room 5? That way I'll stay over here.
concept of a power
All right, Assalamu alaikum to those of you who are joining us back here. Just going to go ahead. I need to give more time. Okay. Hmm. Okay. All right, Assalamu alaikum. Jazakallah khairan, everybody. Thank you so much for coming back. I hope that there was some opportunity for beneficial conversation. If you are back here and you weren't able to complete the survey, you still have a couple minutes to do that as we're waiting for folks to join. And inshallah, this is it. We really appreciate your connection and engagement with us. We, look forward to continuing to communicate with you, at least over email. You're welcome to respond and email me, inshallah, if you have other questions, and I'll punt the ball and the question and the email to those who can answer your questions. I've put my email address there in the chat. Okay, I think we've got people coming back. Jazakallah khairan. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back, everyone. Slowly coming back here.
Yeah.
And I look forward to hearing from, inshallah, the moderators, the facilitators, the panelists, the experts who joined you in your breakout rooms will convey the questions, the comments, the ideas, suggestions that you had. Very nice to be able to speak with you, even if briefly. Please do fill out the survey. And sis, Dr. Rhoda, if you don't mind, is she back here?
Recording in progress.
Okay, I don't see Dr. Rhoda. Is Habeeb back?
I'm not sure.
Oh,
Let
there
me
you are,
see.
Dr. Rhoda. Okay,
Yeah,
great.
I'm here.
All right, Dr. Rhoda, ask any of our panelists to pick a number from until the one that is answered.
Okay, yeah. So the number, you can pick any 5 numbers between 2 and 28.
All right, so we only have 20 respondents. Please, guys, get your, and Rhoda, refresh that just in case if folks are
Okay, hold on.
able to do it. But go ahead, Dr. Omar, do you mind choosing a number between 2 and 28 to be our first raffle winner for this book?
Number 7, inshallah. Yeah, we'll do that.
7. Okay. So Sister Shaza, do I announce the winner now?
Yeah,
Or?
announce the winner.
Okay.
Drum roll.
MashaAllah. So the winner is Sister Rashida Islam from Australia.
Oh,
Is she here, Sister Rashida?
mashallah.
MashaAllah, Sister Rashida, congratulations.
MashaAllah. Just had a conversation with her. Alhamdulillah.
Oh, subhanAllah. Sister Rashida, is she here? I think she can.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, Sister Rashida, please message us in the chat. Message privately, Dr. Rhoda, your mailing address. Or if you can't figure out how to do that, then you can email it here to me. Okay, great. Who's our next one? What numbers do we have from 2 to what, Dr. Rhoda?
Still 2 to 28.
Okay, 2 to 28. Sister Aisha, can you choose a number between 2 to 28 for our second raffle winner?
Oh, subhanAllah. Let's pick 15.
15. Okay. Oh, the winner is Brother Anthony from
Oh,
Arcana
mashallah.
College.
Brother Anthony was in our group.
Congratulations, Brother Anthony. Are you here?
Thank you. Yeah. Very
All
exciting.
right.
I haven't
Brother
won
Anthony.
any in my life. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Congratulations, Brother Anthony. Please go ahead and write a message to me or Dr. Rauda by messaging her in the chat, or you can email me at this email address that you'll see here in the chat.
No worries. Thank you very much. Cheers.
You're welcome. We need your complete mailing address, inshallah, with your name.
Oh,
right.
no worries.
Dr.
Thank
Aasim,
you.
You're welcome. Dr. Aasim, third person. Is it still 1 through 28, Dr. Rhoda, or 2 through 28? Okay.
4.
So Brother Mohammed is asking, how do we get the raffle? You have to answer the survey, and we're just randomly choosing 5 numbers. So we've got 2 down, 3 to go. Dr. Aasim, what number do you choose?
Number 4.
4. Let me see. No, number 4 is you. It's actually you. You have to choose a different
I gotta
number.
sign myself a book.
Yeah,
You
that's
have to
Wait,
be-
but why
No
did you
mailing
answer
then.
the survey, Dr.
exactly.
Aasim?
You're not supposed to.
We're supposed to answer the survey. He's fudging our numbers here.
Rolla,
Okay,
just
Dr.
pick
Aasim, go
yourself.
ahead. Another number.
Go ahead, Rolla, pick your number, favorite number.
No, I can't pick it. It's gonna
She
be
can't,
biased
she's
because
looking at the
I'm
name.
looking. Yeah, I'm looking at the names now.
Okay, how about number 1?
No, it's not be two. Okay, do 2. Do 2, Dr.
It's
Rhoda.
between 2 until 28 because number 1 is just, you can
number
imagine
2,
the
number
Excel.
2, number 2.
Right. Number 2 is Sister Asma Ahmed from Al Huda Academy,
MashaAllah.
United States. Are you?
MashaAllah, Sister Asma. Is that Al Huda in California?
No, this is in Illinois.
MashaAllah. Congratulations, Sister Asma. Please do email us or message Dr. Rhoda your mailing address. All right, we need another winner.
Another 2, right? No, sorry,
Another 2. Can I choose a number?
Yes, sure, of course.
Oh, Brother Habeeb, you're there. Brother Habeeb, choose a number between 2 and 28.
13.
13 is Brother Usama Robert Townsend.
Oh, mashallah. Also the
Yeah.
US. Brother
Yes,
Usama.
Al Madina School. Yep. Mashallah. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, Brother Robert Osama, you know what to do. And actually, I remember you asked me for a copy of that article. Need to send that to you. MashaAllah. I'm happy for you. And the last one, Dr. Rhoda.
Yes, Sister Shaz, I think you can select a number.
Okay, I'm going to choose number 22.
22 is Sister Iman Muhammad Aziz from Michigan Islamic Academy, United States.
Wow, we got...
Sister Iman, are you here?
Yes, Uncle.
Mashallah, congratulations.
Jazakallah khairan. Thank you so much. That was fun. I really appreciate those of you who stayed on for that. And for those of you who stayed with us, of course, we know your time is precious. So without further ado, inshallah, we will be, reaching out back to you about the professional development opportunity. And if you have any questions, again, I've put my email address in the chat. I don't have all the answers, but I'm connected to the people with the answers, inshallah, and I'll be able to provide that to you. Dr. Omar, do you mind closing us out in dua, perhaps with the dua of the majlis, as well as some brief words from your heart?
No, Jazakumullah khairan. I think we should all consider ourselves, whether it's in our daily work as teachers, or in the capacity of serving the teachers, which I consider myself, and I'm sure Dr. Shaza and everybody here, we're in the service, the khidmah of the teacher of our students. So it's the fact that Allah Ta'ala has chosen us to be in such an honorable position. We should be happy and grateful for that, and always ask Allah Ta'ala for His success and His help in doing everything we do. And that's the key, inshallah, to all of this. And with that, inshallah, we'll end with a dua. Allahumma wafiqna lima tuhibbuhu wa tarda waj'alna min abidika su'ada وأمتنا على الكلمة الهدى وعلمنا ما ينفعنا ووفقنا للعمل بما علمتنا به واجعل ما نحن فيه خالصا مخلصا لوجهك الكريم يا رب العالمين. اللهم تجعل تجمعنا تجمعا مرحوما ولا وتفرقنا من بعده تفرقا معصوما لا شقيا منا ولا محروما. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. وصلى الله على سيدنا وحبيبنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم أجمعين. اللهم تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. آمين يا رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everybody. Have a great night or day, inshallah, and we'll be back in touch. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brother Dylan. Assalamu alaikum.
So
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Sister Asiya, Sister Asma, Azra, Iman, Fatima, Huda, Muhammad Shahzad, Mona, Noza.
Sister Shaza, was I supposed to just leave my email?
Yeah, Dr. Brother Osama, do you
Yes.
mind messaging? Brother Osama, you have my email address?
I think I sent it in, I put it in the chat.
Oh, did you?
You see it?
Okay, great.
You see it?
I see it. I see Brother Anthony's. Okay, let me get these. Hold on. Let's see what we.
I can also see Sister Rashida's mailing address. Let me just copy that.
Oh, somebody wants a soft copy of the book. Sorry, sister, we cannot send a soft copy due to copyright issues. Brother Osama, we want your actual mailing address, inshallah, so that we can mail
Oh,
you a hard
mailing address.
copy.
Oh, okay. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Let me put that down there.